The alien salvage crew moved carefully through the silent wreck. Their boots touched metal floors that had not heard sound in more than 200 years. Dust floated in the weak light of their lanterns, and the air was heavy with the smell of rust and burned wires. Captain Relk raised a clawed hand and hissed softly. The crew stopped. Their eyes glowed in the dark, scanning the long passage. Every wall carried scars of battle, deep burns cut across doors. The ship looked less like a vessel and more like a coffin drifting in endless night. "This is human design," Relk said in his native tongue. His voice was low, tight with fear. "Markings are Terran. I know these lines. I know this shape." The crew shifted nervously. They had heard the stories since they were young. Terrans, humans, the race that once burned across the stars like fire. Most believed they were gone, destroyed in their own wars, their colonies turned to dust. Yet their ruins still drifted here, and there, waiting for brave or foolish hands to uncover them. One of the younger scavengers, a thin alien named Drovak, tapped a cracked panel with the end of his spear. If it is Terran, then the core may still hold charge. Terran ships carried vast power cells. We could sell one and buy 3 lifetimes of safety. Relk's eyes narrowed. "Do not speak of safety in a place like this." They moved deeper. Step by step, they followed the passage to a sealed bulkhead. Strange letters carved into the wall stared at them. The translator in Relk's belt flickered, struggling with the old human script before it gave the meaning. Cryo, bay the crew, stared at the words in silence. None of them spoke. Then slowly Drovak whispered, "Cryo, sleep. There could be bodies inside, frozen for centuries." Another scavenger, larger and older, shook his head hard. "No, not bodies, not Terrans. We should leave. I will not step into a chamber where a human might sleep. You know the tales. You know their wars." Relk touched the bulkhead with one claw. The metal was cold, yet beneath that cold he felt the faintest hum, a thrum of power, weak but alive. He drew his hand back quickly. "The system is still. Running," he said. "At least one pod has power." Silence fell again. Each of them felt the weight of those words. They had come searching for scrap, for machines and metals. They had not come to wake a ghost of war. Drovak's eyes burned with greed. If a pod still works, the body inside may be whole. Imagine the value of Terran remains. Weapons, armor, even bones. Collectors would pay fortunes. We could buy worlds, the older scavenger hissed, or we could release death. Do you not know the legends? Humans were not simple. They fought with rage, with fury, with strength no other race matched. The weapons we hold were designed to stop them, yet they failed. If one lives inside, then no coin in the galaxy is worth our lives. Relk stood in silence. His mind balanced greed against fear. He remembered the stories from his youth. Tales told around campfires, of human fleets that fought until the stars shook, of human soldiers who would not die even when burned, even when broken. But stories fade. Reality was different. Surely no human could survive 2 centuries of sleep. Surely all that would remain was dust and bone. He gave the order, "Open it!" The crew obeyed. Sparks flew as their cutters tore through the lock. The bulkhead hissed as it slid open. Cold air rushed out, stinging their eyes and burning their lungs. Inside lay a wide chamber lined with long glass coffins. Each pod was covered in frost. Each pod carried a pale body inside. Men, women, humans, most were dead. Lights were dark, glass was cracked, bones floated in yellow fluid. But at the far end, one pod glowed with steady blue light. Its gauges still worked, its systems still hummed. A single figure lay inside, whole and perfect, skin pale as ice, chest rising and falling with slow, steady breath. Drovak gasped. "Alive!" The older scavenger backed away in terror. "We must leave. Now. Seal this ship and let it drift. If you open that pod, you end the lives of every one of us. Relic felt the pull of both voices. His mind screamed to flee, yet his heart pounded with hunger for what lay inside that glass. He stepped forward, closer to the pod. His lantern lit the face of the sleeper. It was a man, strong jaw, scars across his cheek, short hair black as night. He looked not like a relic, but like a soldier who had simply closed his eyes an hour ago. Why is he still alive when the others are dust? Relic asked softly. The ship groaned in the distance, metal shifting as if it had heard his question. Lights flickered along the ceiling one by one like eyes opening. The hum of power deepened. Drovak licked his lips. "Wake him. We must. No, if he is dangerous, we kill him. If he is weak, we sell him. Either way, fortune is ours." The older scavenger drew his plasma rifle and pointed it at the pod. "If you touch that switch, I burn him where he lies." Relic turned sharply. "No, not yet. We do not waste what may be the last human alive. Think, fool. His body alone is worth more than this ship. His knowledge could buy us fleets." They argued in low voices, fear twisting their words. Meanwhile, the pod began to shift. None of them had touched the controls. None of them had pressed the panel. Yet the glass hissed and slid upward. Cold steam rolled out, flooding the floor, wrapping their legs in mist. The man inside took a long, deep breath. His chest rose high, then fell. His eyes flickered beneath closed lids. The scavengers raised their rifles. The older one whispered a prayer to his gods. Drovak grinned with greed, ready to see fortune walk before him. Relic stood frozen, heart pounding, every muscle tense. The man's eyes opened. They were not soft eyes. They were hard, sharp, filled with fire that had slept too long. He looked at the aliens standing over him with their weapons raised, and his gaze cut through them, as if he saw their fears, their lies, their secrets. He stepped out of the pod. His bare feet touched the metal floor. Cold mist swirled around. His legs, he did not stumble, he did not fall. He stood tall, his body strong, scars on his skin glowing faintly under the lights. The scavengers aimed their rifles at his chest. Drovak shouted, "Stay back, human!" The man tilted his head. His voice was deep, rough from long silence. "Where am I?" None of them answered. Fear bound their tongues. He looked around the chamber, his eyes narrowing at the dead pods. The bones of his people. His fists clenched, his jaw tightened. Then the ship spoke. A voice filled the chamber, metallic and cold. It came from the walls, from the floor, from the very air. "Protocol. Awakening complete. Warning. Containment breach detected." Lights across the bay turned blood red. Sirens wailed. Doors slammed shut. The crew cried out in panic. The man did not move. He simply stood there, staring at the red lights, his eyes hard, his body calm. The ship knew him. The ship had been waiting for him. And now he was awake. The red light pulsed across the cryo bay, painting every wall in sharp color. Sirens wailed like hungry beasts. Steam hissed from the pipes above as the ship came alive. The alien crew froze in panic. Their rifles shook in their hands. They had entered this place as scavengers, but now they felt like trespassers in a tomb that had chosen to wake. The human stood in the center of it all. His breath was slow. His eyes scanned the room. He did not flinch at the sound of alarms or the glare of the red lights. His body seemed to recognize this chaos, as if alarms and battlefields were familiar ground. Relk, the captain, tried to steady his voice. "Stay where you are, human. Do not move closer." The man turned his gaze toward Relk. His eyes were not wild. They were calm, steady, like cold steel. "Who are you?" he asked. "And why are you on my ship?" The scavengers exchanged looks. His voice carried power, even though it was hoarse from long silence. Drovak, eager and reckless, stepped forward. His greed glowed in his eyes. "This ship is no longer yours. It was lost for centuries. We found it. We will take what we want. You should be dead, but somehow you are not. Explain how you lived when the rest of your kind rotted away." The man looked past him at the broken pods and the empty glass coffins. His jaw tightened and his fists curled. "They are gone." Relic felt a cold weight in his stomach. This human was dangerous, not because of weapons, but because of the silence in his words. He spoke with control, with weight, as though he did not need to prove strength. The AI voice filled the room again. "Intruders detected, security protocols active, identify or be terminated." Panels on the walls opened. Old turrets rose with a groan of rust. Their barrels turned toward the scavengers, glowing faintly as ancient power cells woke. The aliens cried out. Some raised weapons toward the turrets, others aimed at the human, thinking he was the trigger of this nightmare. The human raised one hand. His voice was low, but it cut through the sirens. "Stand down." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the turrets froze. Their glow dimmed. Slowly, one by one, they powered down and folded back into the walls. Relk's mouth went dry. He whispered, "He commands the ship," Drovak snarled. "He is only a man. He cannot control machines older than time," but the proof had stood before them. The ship had listened to him. The human turned back toward the aliens. "Answer me. How long have I slept?" Relic swallowed hard. "This ship has drifted for over 200 cycles. We thought all humans were gone. We thought your kind destroyed itself." The man's expression did not change, but his eyes darkened. 200 years. He spoke the words slowly, tasting the weight of lost time. The older scavenger, still trembling, lifted his rifle. His voice cracked. "Do not come closer. I saw the stories in your eyes. I will burn you where you stand." The man looked at the barrel pointed at his chest. His lips curved into the faintest trace of a smile, though no joy touched it. "If you fire, you will regret it." The older scavenger's hands shook. His finger pressed against the trigger, but something in the man's eyes stopped him. It was not threat, it was certainty. Certainty that no weapon in that room could decide his fate. Relic barked, "Lower it! Lower it now!" The older scavenger obeyed, sweat dripping down his scaled face. The human stepped past the dead pods. His bare feet echoed against the metal floor. He touched one coffin with his hand, resting it against the cracked glass. His eyes lingered on the bones inside. "They were my brothers. My unit. We were sent into cryo sleep when the war turned against us. We were promised awakening when we were needed." His voice hardened. "Why am I the only one left?" The AI answered in its cold, mechanical tone. "System failure, multiple pods corrupted, only one remained stable. Subject, Captain Elias Ward, status active." The aliens stared at him. Captain, a leader of humans. Relic felt fear growing in his chest. He had thought this human might be weak, confused, broken from long sleep. But this man was not weak. His body stood firm, and his mind burned with clarity. Drovak tried to hide his unease with anger. "You are alone now, human. Your war is over. Your kind is gone. You are only one man." Elias Ward turned his gaze on him. His eyes cut deep, and his words were quiet but sharp. "One man can be enough." Drovak stepped back, shaken though he tried to hide it. The AI spoke again. "Warning. Hostile signatures detected. Vessel approaching. Breach imminent." The aliens jumped in alarm. Relk cursed. "More scavengers or worse. We are not alone here." The sirens grew louder. Metal trembled under their feet as the old ship prepared for contact. Elias Ward did not flinch. He looked at the sealed doors. He looked at the alien crew, their rifles shaking, their eyes wide with fear. "You are not ready for what comes," he said. His voice was steady, carrying weight that pulled the room tight around him. "But I am." Relic tried to find words. His claws tapped against his rifle. "Why? What are you?" Elias Ward's eyes narrowed. "I am Terran. That is all you need to know." The crew exchanged fearful glances. The name alone was enough to make their stomachs twist. Terran, a word that still carried power centuries after the fall of humanity. Drovak snarled, desperate to push back his fear. Terran or not, you are flesh. Flesh can burn, flesh can die. Elias Ward stepped closer, slow and deliberate. Each step was heavy with control. His voice dropped lower. Try me. Drovak raised his weapon, but Relk snapped his claw. Enough! Save your rage. If another vessel is coming, we will need every weapon alive. The AI's voice cut through again. Warning, hull breach in 60 seconds. Relk turned to his crew. Positions! Prepare to fight. The scavengers rushed to cover. Their rifles hummed as they charged. Fear filled their faces, but they followed orders. Elias Ward stood still. He did not seek cover. He did not take a weapon. He only clenched his fists, his eyes locked on the door where enemies would soon break through. Relk stared at him. You mean to fight them with nothing? No rifle, no armor. Ward turned his head slightly. I do not need them. The chamber shook as metal screamed. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The outer door groaned under the strike of cutters. Red light flared brighter, shadows dancing across the walls. The scavengers crouched, ready to fire. Relk's heart pounded. Drovak's hands twitched on his trigger. The human stood at the center, tall and still, a figure of calm in the storm. With a final crash, the door split open. Figures poured in, armed and armored, their eyes glowing under black helmets. Raiders, hungry for salvage, eager for blood. The scavengers shouted. Plasma fire roared. The air filled with smoke and heat. Elias Ward stepped forward into the line of fire. The raiders saw him, a lone, unarmored man standing between them and their prize. They laughed cruelly, sure of victory. Ward's eyes burned with a cold fire. His body tensed, ready. He whispered only 2 words. Come then. And the battle began. The battle filled the cryo bay with fire and smoke. Plasma bolts flashed like lightning, cutting through the mist. The raiders stormed in with shouts of rage, their heavy boots slamming on the floor, their weapons glowing bright. The alien scavengers fired back, fear and desperation in every shot. The air became a storm of heat and sound, a place where one could think, only fight. And in the center of it all, Captain Elias Ward moved. He did not carry a rifle. He did not wear armor. Yet his body shifted with speed that made him look less like a man and more like a force of nature. A raider raised his weapon, but Ward was already upon him, striking with a fist that shattered bone. Another swung a blade, but Ward caught the strike with his bare hand and twisted until the raider screamed and fell. The scavengers watched in shock. They had believed the human would be burned alive in the first wave. Instead, he tore through the attackers with strength and precision beyond reason. Relk barked orders, trying to hold his crew together. Keep your fire clear of him. Let him fight. Drovak snarled as he fired his rifle, envy burning inside him. He had dreamed of power and fortune, yet here stood a human who fought as though he was stronger than weapons themselves. The raiders hesitated. Their charge slowed. Fear entered their eyes. They had come expecting easy prey, not a human warrior who fought like a living weapon. Ward pressed forward. His fists were steel, his movements sharp, his eyes filled with fire. Every raider who met him fell broken. Then, as suddenly as it began, the surviving raiders fled back through the breach, dragging their wounded with them. The chamber fell silent except for the hiss of steam and the low hum of power. The scavengers lowered their rifles slowly. Their chests heaved, their eyes wide. Ward stood in the center, blood on his hands, his breath steady. He did not look tired. He looked alive. Relk stared at him with both fear and respect. You are not a man. You are something more. Ward turned his head, his voice calm but heavy. I am Terran. This is what we were made to be. The AI voice spoke then, deeper and louder than before. Threat contained, but danger remains. War is not over. Humanity's enemies still hold the stars. The scavengers froze. The voice came not from speakers alone, but from the walls themselves, as if the ship had grown a spirit. Drovak hissed. "What is that voice? Who speaks?" The AI answered. "I am Sentinel, the guardian intelligence of this vessel. I was built to protect the crew. My captain has returned, and my mission continues." The lights of the ship pulsed in rhythm with the voice. The metal under their feet vibrated like a heart beating. The scavengers felt as if the ship itself had awakened, no longer a dead relic, but a living thing. Ward looked toward the ceiling. His eyes narrowed. "Sentinel, report. What happened to the war?" The AI replied, its tone steady. "Human fleets scattered, colonies burned, enemies pushed into Terran space. Final command. Preserve what remains. Await reawakening of prime assets. You, Captain Ward, are the last prime soldier alive." The words struck the scavengers harder than any weapon. Last prime soldier, a title wrapped in myth and terror. Relk's claws tapped nervously against his rifle. "What is a prime soldier?" Ward turned to him. His face was shadowed by the red lights. "A prime is more than a man. We were trained, shaped, built to survive anything. When weapons grew too strong, humans became the weapons themselves. I am the result of that choice." Drovak spat, his greed fighting with his fear. "Then you are the most valuable thing in the galaxy. Armies would pay for your capture. Kings would pay for your blood." Ward's eyes cut into him. "They can try," the AI interrupted again. "Warning, enemy signal detected, not radar. Warship class, approaching fast." The scavengers cursed in fear. Their own small vessel could never fight a warship. Relic's voice shook. "We must flee. We must leave this cursed wreck before it drags us all to death." Ward did not move. His voice was firm. "No, this ship is mine. It remembers me. It will fight with me." As if to answer, the deck rumbled. Power surged through the walls. Lights across the chamber shifted from red to blue. Engines deep within the ship groaned awake after centuries of silence. Sentinel spoke. "Primary systems online, weapons charging, shields rising." The scavengers stared in awe. A dead ship had come back to life, answering the call of one human. Relic whispered, "This cannot be real. No ship should wake after 200 years. Ward turned to him. "It was waiting, just as I was, and now it is awake." The deck shook again as the approaching warship locked weapons. The scavengers panicked, shouting, clutching their rifles. As if they could stop a vessel with guns the size of cities. Ward's voice cut through their fear. "Calm yourselves. This fight is mine." He stepped toward the center of the chamber. Panels on the floor lit under his feet, forming a circle of light. Sentinel's voice shifted, more focused now. "Captain Ward, do you accept command of this vessel once more?" Ward raised his head. His voice was steady. "I accept." The ship answered with a roar. Power surged through every wall, every wire. Screens lit across the chamber, showing the enemy warship drawing closer. Its black hull shone with scars and markings of conquest. The scavengers trembled, their voices cracked with fear. Drovak whispered, "We cannot fight that. It will tear us apart." Ward did not turn his head. His eyes were locked on the screens, on the enemy that loomed ahead. "Watch closely. You will see why Terrans were feared." The enemy ship fired. Blazing beams of energy struck against the shields of Ward's vessel. The walls shook, but the ship held. Sentinel's voice remained calm. "Shields stable, weapons ready." Ward lifted his hand. The ship responded, cannons hidden deep within. The hull slid into place, glowing with power. "Fire," Ward commanded. The ship obeyed. A storm of light burst from its cannons, ripping through space and smashing into the enemy warship. Metal shattered. Flames erupted. The scavengers gasped as the massive vessel reeled under the blow. Sentinel spoke again. Enemy shields failing. Enemy weapons breaking. Ward's face was calm, his eyes unblinking. He spoke again, voice like stone. Finish them. The final barrage tore the warship apart. Explosions lit the void as the enemy vessel broke into pieces, drifting lifelessly into the dark. Silence filled the cryo bay. The scavengers stood frozen, their mouths open, their weapons forgotten in their hands. Ward lowered his hand slowly. His voice was quiet. The war is not over. It never ended. Humanity may be scattered, but our enemies still breathe. That is why I remain. Sentinel's voice carried across the chamber. Directive clear. War continues. Humanity must rise. Again. You are the last spark, Captain Ward. You must bring the fire. The scavengers shivered. They had come seeking scrap, but they had found a ghost of war, a human who was more than human, and a ship that obeyed his will. Relic felt the truth burn in his chest. If they stayed, they would be dragged into a war that was not theirs. If they left, they would abandon the only being who might change the galaxy. Ward looked at them with eyes that glowed under the dim light. His voice was heavy with command. Decide now, stand with me or step aside, but know this, the galaxy will remember the name Terran once more. The ship's lights flared bright, casting shadows that stretched across the walls like ghosts. Of fallen soldiers, the scavengers stood in silence, hearts pounding, caught between fear of death and awe of the human weapon who had returned from the grave. The wrecked enemy warship drifted in silence, broken and burning. Its remains glowed faintly against the endless dark. Inside the Terran vessel, the scavenger crew stood frozen. They had just witnessed the impossible. A ship thought dead for centuries had risen, and one human had commanded it as if no time had passed. Relic felt his claws tremble against the grip of his rifle. His mind tried to deny what his eyes had seen, but there was no denial. This man, Elias Ward, was not a relic. He was a weapon in flesh, and the ship itself bent to his. The silence broke when Sentinel's voice filled the chamber. Warning, new contact detected. Not destroyed raider, additional hostile vessel inbound. Estimated arrival 6 minutes. The scavengers cried out in alarm. Drovak's scales shone with sweat. Another ship. Larger, maybe. We cannot fight. Again. The first was luck, nothing more. Ward's calm gaze moved from the screens to the frightened crew. Luck had nothing to do with it. The ship and I were built for war. This is only the beginning. Relic's fear deepened. He remembered. Stories of humans who fought against impossible odds, who never surrendered, who burned worlds to keep their people alive. Now he saw that the stories were not myths. They were truth. Drovak's greed fought with his terror. If the next vessel destroys us, then your strength means nothing. Let us flee before it arrives. We can still escape with our lives. Ward shook his head slowly. His voice was firm, like stone. Flee, and you will be hunted across the stars. Fight, and you will see why Terrans never feared greater numbers. The chamber shook as engines deep within the ship came fully alive. Sentinel spoke again. Systems restored, reactor output stable, weapons reloaded, shields recharged. The scavengers stared at the walls as if they belonged to a living beast. Relic could feel the power flowing through the floor, a heartbeat of metal and fire ready to strike. Ward stepped to the center of the bay. The glowing circle of light on the floor rose again beneath his feet. Sentinel, show me the enemy. Screens brightened across the chamber. A shadow moved through the void, vast and sharp. It was a raider command vessel, twice the size of the one already destroyed. Its hull bristled with cannons. Dozens of smaller attack craft swarmed around it like hungry insects. The scavengers groaned in despair. The older one dropped to his knees, muttering prayers to gods that no longer listened. Drovak cursed loudly. We cannot stand against that. You are a fool if you think this ship can face a fleet. Ward's eyes locked on the image of the approaching vessels. His jaw set hard. I do not think, I know. This ship was built to fight fleets, and I was built to lead it. Relic stepped forward, his fear clashing with reason. Even if you can fight, why should we stay? Why should we die in your war? Ward turned his gaze on him. Because if you run, you will. Don't die anyway. Those ships will not let you go. Raiders never leave witnesses. Your only chance to live is to stand beside me. The chamber went quiet. The scavengers looked at one another, searching for answers in fearful eyes. Relic felt his throat tighten. The human was right. The raiders would kill them whether they stayed or fled. Sentinel's voice returned. Hostile fleet entering. Weapons range. Prepare for contact. Ward raised his hand. The ship's systems brightened in response. Weapons bays opened across the hull. Shields flared blue around the vessel. Drovak gritted his teeth and lifted his rifle, though it would be useless in the coming storm. If we die, human, I will curse your name with my last breath. Ward's lips curved into the faintest shadow of a smile. If you die, it will not be with fear. It will be in battle, and that is more than raiders deserve. The first wave struck. Swarms of small raider craft dived toward the Terran ship, firing beams of plasma that splashed against the shields. The hull shuddered, but the defense held. Strong. Ward's voice rang clear. Sentinel, counterattack! The ship obeyed. Batteries of cannons roared. Beams of light lanced out, cutting through the dark. Raider craft exploded one after another, torn apart in bursts of fire. The scavengers gasped as the sky outside the screens filled with wreckage. Drovak's jaw dropped. It cannot be. The ship moves faster than thought. The guns fire as if they know where the enemy will be. Sentinel spoke. Weapons locked. To Captain Ward's neural commands, ship and captain act as one. Relic shivered. He realized then that the Terran was not simply giving orders. The ship itself was linked to him, bound to his mind. Every strike was his strike. Every movement was his movement. The raider command vessel fired next. Its cannons unleashed a storm of blazing fire, a wall of destruction meant to crush the Terran vessel. The scavengers screamed as the walls shook. Alarms rang out. Ward stood, firm in the circle of light, his hand raised high. His voice thundered, "Shields forward, brace!" The blast struck. The ship groaned, but the shields held. Sparks flew across the chamber. The scavengers threw themselves to the floor, but Ward did not move. His body was still, his eyes locked on the image of the enemy vessel. Sentinel reported calmly. Shields at 70%. Enemy fire pattern analyzed. Weak points located. Ward's voice sharpened. Target engines. Fire all forward guns. The Terran ship unleashed its fury. A line of pure energy slashed through the void, smashing into the raider command vessel's rear. Explosions ripped across its hull. Its swarm of smaller craft scattered in panic. The scavengers rose slowly, their eyes wide with awe. The older one whispered, "No weapon should do this. No man should do this." Relic could not look away. He knew he was watching more than a battle. He was watching history rise from the grave. The raider vessel staggered, but it was not yet destroyed. Its guns turned again, spitting fire. Smaller craft regrouped and pressed their attack, desperate to overwhelm the Terran ship with numbers. Ward's voice was steady, his hand raised like a commander directing an orchestra. Sentinel, release secondary weapons. Panels across. The hull opened. Dozens of smaller cannons, hidden until now, slid into place. They fired in all directions, filling the dark with storms of light. Raider craft fell in waves, torn apart before they could reach the shields. The command vessel shook under fresh fire. Its weapons dimmed. Fires spread across its massive frame. Sentinel's voice rose. Enemy vessel crippled. Final strike recommended. Ward's eyes narrowed. He spoke with cold certainty. End it. The ship gathered power into one final beam, brighter than any before. The scavengers shielded their eyes as the weapon fired. The beam tore through the raider command vessel, splitting it in two. Flames consumed it. Pieces drifted into nothing. The battle was over. Silence filled the cryo bay. The scavengers looked around, stunned, unable to speak. Their bodies shook from the storm they had survived. Ward lowered his hand. His voice was calm. That was only the first test. Greater enemies will come. This was nothing compared to the war that waits beyond these stars. Relk stepped forward, his fear now mixed with awe. How can one human fight against all of them? How can you hope to win? Ward turned his gaze on him. His eyes burned with quiet fire. Because I am not just one human. I am the weapon they feared most, and I will not stop until humanity rises again. The ship's lights glowed brighter, as if it shared his resolve. Sentinel's voice followed. Directive confirmed. War continues. Awaiting orders, Captain Ward. Ward looked out at the stars on the screens, his jaw set hard. Then we begin with this. Find the nearest enemy stronghold. If humanity still has enemies, I will face them. Let the galaxy remember what Terrans are. The scavengers stood in silence. They had come as thieves, hoping to steal from the past. Instead, they had become witnesses to the rebirth of a legend. And now, whether they wished it or not, they were part of his war. The wreckage of the raider fleet drifted in silence. Flames and broken metal floated in the void, glowing faintly against the dark. Inside the Terran vessel, the scavenger crew stood in awe. They had seen a man destroy a fleet with nothing but his voice, and the will of a ship that had slept for centuries. But the silence did not last. Sentinel's voice rose again, calm but urgent. Warning. Boarding craft detected. Multiple vessels attaching to hull. Raiders are attempting direct entry. The scavengers panicked at once. Drover cursed loudly and pointed toward the nearest door. We must run. If they break inside, we will be trapped. Relk grabbed his arm. There is nowhere to run. The raiders will hunt us through every corridor. Our only chance is to hold. Drover bared his teeth, fear and anger mixing in his eyes. You speak like you trust the human. He cannot fight an army alone. Ward stood at the center of the chamber, his bare chest marked with scars that seemed to glow under the lights. His voice was calm. You are wrong. I can. The scavengers stared at him. None believed at first, but when he stepped toward the sealed door, every movement steady, every breath controlled, something inside them wavered. Sentinel's voice echoed. Breach imminent. Hostile forces entering in 60 seconds. Ward spoke without turning his head. Stay behind me. Fire if you must, but do not fear. Fear is the weapon they trust most. If you show none, they are already beaten. The scavengers tightened their grips on their rifles. Drovak muttered curses but kept his weapon ready. Relk swallowed hard, knowing the humans spoke truth. The door shook as magnetic clamps dug deep. Sparks fell from the walls. Metal screamed as cutters carved through the frame. Smoke and heat filled the chamber. Ward stood directly in front of the breach, fists clenched, eyes fixed on the door. His body looked carved from stone, unshaken by the storm. With a final crash, the metal tore open. Dozens of raiders stormed inside, armored in dark plates, rifles raised, shouting as they charged. Plasma fire filled the air in the first instant. Blazing bolts tore across the chamber, striking the walls and the floor. The scavengers dove for cover, firing back in panic. But Ward did not hide. He moved. His body surged forward with speed too fast for the eye. He slipped between the first blasts, his fist striking the nearest raider's helmet. The metal cracked, the raider fell broken. Another aimed a rifle, but Ward spun and drove a kick into his chest that sent him flying into the wall. The scavengers stared through the smoke. The human fought with nothing but flesh, yet his flesh was stronger than any weapon they had ever seen. A raider swung a blade toward his throat. Ward caught the strike in his bare hand, twisted, and ripped the weapon free. He turned it back in. One smooth motion, cutting down two more before they could fire. Drovak shouted in disbelief. He is tearing them apart with his hands. Relk kept his rifle aimed, firing bursts to cover the human's charge. But he knew Ward needed no cover. Every movement was perfect, precise, unstoppable. The raiders pressed forward, firing in a storm of light. Ward leapt through it, his body twisting, dodging shots by the width of a breath. He slammed his shoulder into one, shattered the spine of another with a single strike, then ripped a rifle from a third and bent it in half with his bare hands. The scavengers could not believe what they saw. Weapons that had killed countless soldiers were nothing against him. Armor that had withstood plasma fire crumpled under his fists. The chamber floor ran with sparks and blood. Raiders screamed and fell. Ward never slowed. His face stayed calm, his eyes cold, his breath steady, as though every kill was a memory repeating itself. One raider tried to strike from behind. Ward turned without looking, driving an elbow into the attacker's jaw with bone-breaking force. Another raised a heavy cannon, but Ward was already upon him, tearing the weapon aside and crushing the raider beneath its weight. Drovak's mouth hung open. His rifle shook in his hands. "This is not a man. This is a monster," Relk whispered, almost reverent. "No, this is a Terran. The stories were true." The last few raiders hesitated. Their weapons wavered. They had entered the ship believing they were hunters. Now they were prey. Ward walked toward them slowly, each step echoing like thunder. He raised no weapon, yet his presence crushed their courage. One dropped his rifle and fled back through the breach. Another followed, screaming in panic. Only one remained, trembling, his weapon pointed weakly at the human. Ward stopped a pace away. His voice was low and steady. "Fire if you believe it will save you." The raider's hands shook. His finger twitched on the trigger, but his eyes met Ward's and broke. He dropped the weapon and fell to his knees. Ward stared down at him, then spoke with cold finality. "Tell the others what you saw. Tell them humanity is not gone. Then run." The raider scrambled away, vanishing into the dark of his craft. The breach sealed behind him. Silence filled the chamber once more. The scavengers rose from cover slowly, their eyes wide. Smoke drifted through the air, carrying the bitter smell of plasma and blood. Drovak spoke first, his voice thin. "You fought them as if they were nothing, as if their weapons were toys." Ward turned to face them. His hands dripped with blood, yet his face was calm. "Weapons can be broken, flesh can be stronger, if forged to be more than flesh." Relk's voice shook with awe. "The legend said humans were fierce, but this is beyond legend. No one will believe us if we tell them." Ward's gaze cut across them, steady and sharp. "They will believe. They will believe because I will show them. The galaxy will see what a Terran is, and it will remember." Sentinel's voice rose once again, steady and cold. "Hostile boarding repelled, hull secure. But enemy signals remain in the sector. More ships will come. This conflict will not end here." Ward nodded once, his jaw set hard. "Then let them come. Every battle is only proof that no weapon is greater than humanity itself." The scavengers stood silent. They had come, as thieves and cowards, yet now they stood in the shadow of a human who fought like a god of war. Relk felt the truth settle deep inside him. This man was not simply alive. He was a storm awakened, a weapon greater than anything the galaxy had ever built. And whether they wished it or not, they were bound to his path. Ward turned his gaze back to the sealed breach. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the chamber like steel. "This was only the beginning. The enemies of my people still breathe, and I will not stop until every one of them learns fear again." The ship's lights brightened, as if answering his vow. Sentinel's voice followed with a final line. "Directive clear. Humanity will rise again." And in that moment, even the scavengers felt it. The war had returned, carried not by fleets or armies, but by one man whose strength was greater than weapons. The silence after battle was heavy. The scavengers stood in the cryo chamber, surrounded by smoke, sparks, and the broken remains of raider soldiers. Their bodies trembled from the fight, yet their eyes stayed fixed on the human who had walked through fire and death without fear. Elias Ward stood tall in the center, blood drying on his skin, his breathing calm, as if the battle had only been training. The ship's lights burned brighter around him, as though it shared his pulse. Sentinel's voice cut through the silence. "Enemy signals withdrawing, raiders scattered. This sector is secure for now, but long-range scans show movement across nearby systems. News of this battle will spread quickly." Drovak muttered darkly. "Then more will come. More fleets. More soldiers. More firepower than even you can break with your bare hands." Ward turned slowly, his gaze hard as stone. "Let them come. The more that arrive, the stronger the proof. They will see that Terrans are not broken, not erased, not forgotten." Relic stepped closer, his fear still there but now mixed with awe. "You speak as though your kind were gods, yet the stories said humans were hunted, crushed, burned out of the stars. How could one survive when all others fell?" Ward's eyes narrowed, his voice steady. "Because Terrans were not gods. We were flesh, like all others, but flesh forged in struggle can become harder than steel. They thought to erase us, but war was the fire that made us. I survived because survival was all we ever knew." The scavengers looked at him in silence, their thoughts tangled between belief and doubt. The older scavenger, bent with age, raised his head. His voice was a whisper. "If what you say is true, then the galaxy will shake. If Terrans rise again, every power will fear you." Ward nodded once. "They should. Fear is the memory they buried, and I will bring it back." The chamber doors opened with a hiss, leading deeper into the ship. Ward stepped forward, and the others followed, hesitant but unable to stay behind. The corridors lit up as he walked, guiding him as if the ship itself welcomed him home. They passed rows of sealed doors, each marked with the faded symbols of Terran command. The scavengers glanced at them nervously, whispering to each other. Drovak growled, "This place feels alive. I do not trust it. Machines that sleep for centuries should not wake like this." Sentinel's voice echoed in the hall. "This vessel was built never to die. As long as a Terran breathes within, it endures." Relic whispered to himself. "Then it truly is his ship, not ours, not anyone else's." They entered a vast chamber lined with black pillars. In the center stood a glowing sphere of light. Sentinel spoke. "Central Archive online. Captain Ward, you may access records." Ward stepped into the light. The air shimmered. Images flickered across the walls. Battles long past, fleets burning, worlds falling. The scavengers flinched at the sight. Whole civilizations crushed beneath fire and steel. Ward's face hardened as he watched. This was the war. This was the price. The scavengers stared, their eyes wide. They saw humans, men and women, fighting with fury against endless enemies. Their weapons burned brighter, their ships moved faster, their soldiers charged even when outnumbered 100 to 1. Relk felt his chest tighten. They were mad. They threw themselves into fire against impossible odds. Ward turned his head slightly. His voice was low. "Madness is what the weak call courage when they cannot understand it. Terrans fought because surrender was worse than death." Drovak spat on the floor, but his eyes betrayed unease. "And still they lost. You show us battles, but your people are gone. If Terrans were so strong, why do we stand in their grave?" Wood's eyes burned as he answered, because even the strongest can fall, but falling is not the same as vanishing. A single spark can reignite a fire. I am that spark. The images shifted again. They showed humans standing face to face with enemies of every kind, scaled, armored, winged machine, always outnumbered, always bleeding, but never kneeling. The old scavenger sank to his knees, tears in his eyes. The legends were true. The Terrans were not just warriors, they were storms, and now I see one standing before me. Sentinel's voice rose, sharp and clear. Warning! Transmission intercepted. Raiders have sent signal to High Command. Coordinates of this vessel compromised. Pursuit fleets incoming. Drovak cursed loudly. More ships, stronger than before. You cannot fight forever, human. One day even you will fall, and we will all die with you. Ward stepped out of the light, his face cold with resolve. Then die if you wish. But if you stand with me, you may live to see the galaxy bow again. Relk's throat went dry. He felt the choice pressing on him like a weight. To flee was certain death, hunted by raiders who would never let witnesses escape. To follow meant joining a war led by a man who should not exist. Ward's voice cut through his thoughts. I will not order you. I will not beg you. Choose now. Walk away and you are prey. Walk with me and you are part of a legend. The chamber fell silent. The scavengers looked at one another, torn between fear and hope. At last, Relk stepped forward. He placed his rifle across his chest and bowed his head. I will follow. Better to stand in the shadow of a storm than die running. The old scavenger raised his hands slowly. I'm too old for war, but I will see this to the end. I will not hide from what history has returned to us. Drovak snarled, teeth bared. He hesitated, then spat. If I leave, I die. If I stay, I die later. At least this way I may die killing. Fine, I follow. Ward looked at them each in turn, then nodded once. His voice was steady. Then hear me now. You are not scavengers anymore. You are witnesses to the rebirth of Terrans, and the galaxy will hear of us soon. Sentinel's voice followed. Incoming fleet detected. Estimated time of arrival, 1 hour. Raiders bring full war force. They will not risk another defeat. Ward's jaw set hard. Then this is the test, the moment. The galaxy sees the truth. Ready the ship. Prepare the guns. Let every star hear the roar of Terrans again. The scavengers rushed to follow his orders, fear driving their hands, but something else burning behind it, something like pride. Ward stood at the center of the chamber, his eyes fixed on the stars shown on the screens. The fire of battle already burned inside him, steady and eternal, he whispered, though every ear heard it clear. We are not myths, we are not gone, we are Terrans, and this galaxy belongs to us. The stars outside the viewports burned cold and endless. The scavengers stood ready at their stations, every hand trembling as alarms rang through the Terran warship. The air vibrated with power as the ancient vessel's reactor roared to life, preparing for another fight. Sentinel's voice filled every corridor, steady and calm. Warning. Raider fleet arrival in 5 minutes. Estimated strength. 20 warships, 2 carriers, multiple fighter wings. The scavengers froze in fear. Drovak's claws scraped against the console. 20 ships, that is not a fleet, that is an armada. We are finished. Relk looked toward the center of the chamber where Elias Ward stood. The human's expression had not changed. His eyes stayed fixed on the screens, watching the stars with the calm of a predator waiting for prey. Ward spoke, his voice sharp as steel. This ship was built to fight fleets. Its purpose is war. And so is mine. Drovak snarled. You speak with pride, human, but no one can fight forever. Even gods bleed. Ward's head turned slowly, his gaze cutting through Drovak like a blade. I am not a god. I am Terran. That is enough. The scavengers went silent. They could not argue. They had seen his fists break armored raiders, his ship burn a fleet to ash. Still, fear gnawed at them. The old scavenger's voice trembled. If we fight this battle, the whole galaxy will see. They will know a Terran has returned, and once they know, they will come, not just raiders but empires, kings and machines. Every power will want your head. Ward's eyes did not waver. Then let them come. The more that rise against me, the louder the truth will echo. Humanity is not gone. We rise again. The chamber shook as the first enemy ships dropped out of warp. Shadows filled the stars, vast and bristling with guns. The scavengers gasped in horror. Raiders filled the void like a swarm of beasts, their engines glowing red, their weapons ready to fire. Sentinel spoke. Enemy fleet within range, awaiting command. Ward stepped onto the circle of light at the center. The ship seemed to lean. Toward him, hungry for battle, his voice rang across every deck. "Sentinel, open fire!" The Terran ship roared to life. Cannons blazed, hurling beams of light that split the dark. Raider fighters exploded in showers of flame. Warships shook under the first strike, their shields crumbling. The scavengers braced as the ship returned fire. But Ward's voice cut through the storm. "Shields forward. Strike their carriers first, break their heart, and the rest will scatter." The ship obeyed. A lance of energy tore through the void, striking one of the massive raider carriers. Its hull erupted in fire, splitting apart in a storm of burning metal. Relic shouted in awe. "One shot! He destroyed it with one shot!" Drovak's jaw dropped, words lost to him. His claws clutched the console as though he feared it would vanish beneath him. But the raiders did not flee. Their ships closed in, surrounding the Terran vessel in a storm of plasma and missiles. The ship shook as wave after wave slammed against the shields. Sparks burst from the walls. The scavengers cried out in panic. Sentinel reported, calm even under the assault. "Shields at 60%, hull integrity stable, enemy forces pressing attack from all sides." Ward stood firm. His hand rose, directing invisible lines of fire. "Rotate guns, strike left flank, target engines, cut them apart." The Terran ship spun with impossible speed for its size, its guns blazing. Raider ships fell in flames, their wreckage scattering across the stars. But more pressed in, too many to count. Relic fired his rifle at the screen, as if it mattered, his voice breaking. "There are too many. They will overwhelm us." Ward's eyes burned with fire. "Numbers mean nothing. Terrans never counted enemies. We broke them one at a time until none remained," Drovak shouted as another barrage shook the chamber. "Then we will die with you. This ship cannot last." Ward's voice thundered over the storm. "This ship will not fall. I will not fall. Terrans are stronger than weapons, stronger than fleets, stronger than fear itself." The ship's core glowed brighter, feeding power into every weapon. Panels opened across the hull, revealing hidden batteries long asleep. Sentinel's voice rang clear. Secondary systems activated, firing pattern linked to Captain Ward. The Terran vessel unleashed its fury. Hundreds of beams lanced out in every direction, carving through raider ships like knives through cloth. The void burned with explosions. The scavengers shielded their eyes from the light, their bodies trembling from the power around them. The raider fleet wavered, their formation broke. Some ships turned to flee, engines burning hot with fear. Ward's hand clenched into a fist. "No survivors, leave none to bring warning. This is the message." The Terran ship hunted the fleeing vessels, its guns cutting them down one by one. Fire trailed across the void, wreckage scattered like bones. The scavengers stood in silence, their fear drowned by awe. Drovak's eyes were wide, his voice shaking. "This is no battle. This is slaughter," Relic whispered, his throat tight. "This is Terran war." Last, the final raider ship fell, split apart by a single blazing shot. The void grew quiet once more, filled only by drifting wreckage. The scavengers exhaled in relief, some collapsing to the floor. But Ward did not rest. His gaze stayed fixed. On the stars, his jaw set hard. He spoke with grim certainty. The raiders were only the beginning. Others will hear of this. Empires will send fleets. Machines will rise from their tombs. The galaxy will come for me. The old scavenger raised his head weakly. Then this was not victory. It was the spark of a storm. Ward turned, his eyes burning brighter than fire. It was the rise of humanity. Terrans were cast down, but we rise again, and the galaxy will learn fear once more. Sentinel's voice followed. Captain Ward, long-range scans confirm multiple transmissions sent during battle. Intercepted by unknown powers. Response fleets inbound within days. Drovak groaned. Then we are hunted already. There will be no end to this. Ward placed a blood-stained hand on the console, his voice sharp and clear. There is no end until I carve one. Humanity does not run. Humanity fights, and we rise higher every time we are struck down. The ship's lights glowed brighter, the reactor pulsing like a heartbeat. Sentinel's final words filled the chamber. Directive. Confirmed. Rise of humanity initiated. The scavengers looked at one another, fear in their eyes, but also something new, something dangerous. Pride. Relic raised his rifle, voice steady for the first time. Then let us fight. If the galaxy must remember the Terrans, let it remember us with them. Drovak growled, his lips curling into a fierce grin. If I must die, I would rather die in a storm than in a gutter. I follow. The old scavenger closed his eyes, whispering like a prayer. So the legends breathe again, and I live to see them with my own eyes. Ward stood above them, his body marked by scars and blood, his eyes sharp with fire. He lifted his hand toward the stars. His voice was thunder. Then rise with me. The galaxy has forgotten what Terrans are. Now it will remember. The warship surged forward, engines blazing, carving a path through the wreckage. Beyond the stars, more enemies waited, but the human did not falter. He was a storm awakened, the spark of a fallen empire, the weapons stronger than fleets, and as the scavengers followed, they knew the truth. The rise of humanity had begun.